The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, thank you to today's event, and I would like to introduce Greg Core.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our last National TA Call of 2018. I want to thank, first of all, Jennifer Reed from AIR, who has helped us get adjusted to this new platform that we're going to be using today. For those of you who were unfortunate enough to be on last month's call, we had a new service that just was not working very well. So we have AIR hosting today, and we're really looking forward to a great technical as well as substantive presentation using the new GoToWebinar function. Just a couple kind of housekeeping things before we get started. As I mentioned, this is a new platform. Everyone will be in a listen-only mode. We will be able to record both the audio and the slides and post those to Brad after the call. We're really excited about that because we know not everybody can participate in the live call. Also, even those of you who do may want to go back and listen to all or parts of it later. There will be an opportunity to ask questions through the chat box. So you should see the chat up there. We will be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation, but probably not taking questions till closer to the end of the actual presentation. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can, and for those that we can't get to, we'll try to respond to you in grabs or some other way. So great, and I have participated in a lot of the Rethink calls that Johnny Collette has been hosting as we kind of think through RDA. And one of the striking things for me about that is there seems to be almost universal support for the SSIP. As challenging as it is, as resource intensive as it can be for states, particularly for states with small front office staff, folks are excited about the work. They really see the promise of systemic change in their systems, and they're urging us, the comment I've largely heard is, as we go forward, they're urging us to, at a minimum, retain the essential features of the SSIP. That's really encouraging, and I think we feel the same way about that here at OSEP. Joining me for today's call is Leslie Fox, who is the facilitator for our Performance Accountability Implementation Team, who are responsible for the SSIP process. Also Judy Gregorian, who is the Associate Division Director here, assigned to the Performance Team. And we have two Performance Team members that have worked hard to prepare this presentation today, Kathy Heck and Janine Rutter. So I wanted to welcome all of them to the call. The purpose of today's call is to help states prepare the Phase 3, Year 3, that's right, this is Year 3, submission, which is due on April 1st, 2019. In addition to walking through the submission process and highlighting some important information regarding the technical aspects of the submission, such as how to submit in GRADS and where to include the SIMR data. We will also be addressing report content, specifically what information should states include in the SSIP submission, as well as some suggestions on how to do that in a way that clearly communicates and honors all of the work done over the past year. We want to experiment with one of the features that we haven't had available to us before, that's the online poll. So we're going to ask the polling question. I had an opportunity yesterday to meet with a number of new Part B directors. They were part of the NASD New Directors Academy, and there were 11 able to participate, and I think 1 or 2 more. So we know that there's a lot of turnover, both at the Part B and Part C level. So some of you may be fairly new to the SSIP process. So if you're brand new to this coming up SSIP submission, please notify your OSEP state lead as soon as possible so that we can target our support to your needs. So if we could ask the first polling question, if you're new, please indicate that.
And so far, we have about half of the participants who have voted, and 83% of them are saying no, that they're not new necessarily to this process.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. So of those who have voted so far, which is about half, 83% are not new. We've got a lot of veterans on the call.
We're up to about 75% that have voted. It hasn't changed much, so it looks like we have some seasoned veterans on the call.
Okay, we're still about 87%. Is that right, Leslie?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, if you're new, welcome. If you're a veteran, return. Now I'm going to turn the call over to Janine Rudder to walk us through what to expect during the 2019 SSIP submission and review process.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. As Greg just mentioned, I'll provide an overview of the upcoming SSIP review process and then delve a little bit deeper into some of the content and some of the technical aspects of submitting the SSIP document. The 2019 submission will likely be very similar to this past year's process. As always, the due date falls in the first week of April, and this year it happens to be April 1st, so no changes there. The primary components of the process include OSEP's initial check for approvability, which is the first week that the SSIPs arrive. During that check, we look to ensure that the SSIP actually has been submitted and that SIMR data is included in the submission so that these issues can be addressed during clarification if needed. Please note that the SIMR data should either be included in the appropriate indicator in the APR or prominently displayed and clearly labeled in the SSIP submission. This information shouldn't be buried somewhere in the appendices or toward the end of the document. We shouldn't really have to search for that. So next, after the SSIPs arrive, each state lead does a thorough read of the SSIP and captures the key pieces of information from that review, including any strengths, any clarifying questions that will address post-determinations on feedback calls, and then any concerns that would suggest OSEP identify or direct TA resources to the state. After that, the state leads collaborate with the performance team as needed to develop feedback for the state. And lastly, the feedback calls are scheduled. Typically, they take place between July and September. Now I'll focus on the contents of the SSIP and highlight what states should emphasize when writing about the work that took place this past year. This information is directly from the measurement language, which again has not changed in the past year. The work reported on in the SSIP should include activities conducted over the past year of implementation, basically the work accomplished since the last SSIP submission. It should be clear what activities were conducted related to infrastructure improvement and evidence-based practices. The submission should discuss the outcomes of the work as well as the data that was collected on these activities and the impact on the state system or SIMR data as a result. An important part of discussing the outcomes of the work is explaining what is actually different in your state as a result of the activities conducted in the past year during your SSIP work. How is the state operating differently? And how are teachers or providers behaving differently as a result of your SSIP work? The submission should also address how the process of implementing the SSIP has gone over the past year. What are the major successes and challenges? Any anticipated barriers to the work? And how the state is working to overcome those barriers. It should also provide a sense of the type of input stakeholders provided and how that input shapes the outcome of decisions about the work. Any data collected on the progress of the SSIP should be included, and how has that data informed the course of the activities moving forward? Now we'll shift towards submission logistics. As was the case since the start of the SSIP, it may be submitted either as an attachment in GRAD 360 or directly into the indicator page in the APR. The measurement language, again, hasn't changed and remains available for reference. And the prompts for each area, which are data analysis, implementation analysis and evaluation, and stakeholder engagement, are the same as last year and correspond with the resources OSEP has provided to help states prepare the submission, including the optional organizational outline, which was shared with states back in November of 2016 and posted to GRAD 360 in the SSIP resources section. One thing we can't emphasize enough is that there needs to be consistency between any data reported in GRAD and the data reported in the submission. Make sure that if data is reported in both GRADs and within the attached document, that it matches. Just a reminder that the state must include SIMR data and report on progress toward the SIMR target. This may be entered, again, directly into GRAD 360 or included in the narrative report that's submitted. Just to emphasize one last time, if the data has been entered into GRAD but changed in the last 3 years, please make sure that the GRAD 360 data matches what is reported on and used in the attached report. These should be consistent. So now we're going to take a closer look at the various components of the SSIP work and what makes it meaningful. Regarding infrastructure improvement, it's important to remain mindful that the SSIP is a systems improvement plan and not just the selection and use of evidence-based practices. A significant goal of this work is about improving the system that supports high-quality interventions. This may look like improved data systems or updated policies and procedures, or a more effective way of delivering technical assistance to districts or providers. Now my colleague Kathy will talk through some of the other aspects of the work, as well as some tips and hints for preparing the submission. Okay, Kathy?
Thank you, Janine. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the most critical information to include in your SSIP submission. In terms of implementation, analysis, and evaluation, we would like you to summarize and describe the evidence-based practices you implemented during your Phase 3, Year 3. Those activities should have taken place between April 1st, 2018 and March 31st, 2019. Also, include a description of how the state ensures fidelity of implementation and how the use of the selected evidence-based practices is impacting your SIMR data. Regarding stakeholder engagement, we want you to include more than just who attends stakeholder meetings and what stakeholders said as a result of what the state presented to them. Tell us how stakeholders were involved in the process. How did they contribute to decisions that were made? What role did stakeholders play in any changes in implementation or evaluation that have occurred during this SSIP cycle? Also, have you added any new stakeholders to your stakeholder groups? If so, what is the added value that they bring to your efforts? Let us know. I'm just going to share a few writing tips with you that I hope will be helpful. We know that there are many ways to approach this work, and OSEP offers states flexibility in using approaches that state directors and Part C coordinators find most useful to address their needs and stakeholder interests. We do ask that you keep in mind how the submission is organized and make sure that information and progress is clearly presented in the appropriate sections of the document. We know that action plans and project tracking charts can be useful for the state's process. However, if you do include them within the SSIP document, we ask that you put them in the appendices. along with a clear explanation as to the function and information included on those charts or forms. Now, we do have examples of states who presented SSIP that were organized well and included the necessary and important information in a very concise manner. Arkansas B and Vermont B did a great job of aligning their theory of action with their evaluation. They also provided strong executive summaries that included a sufficient level of detail and included their simmer and addressed the performance measures they used during their SSIP cycle. Another great quality of these submissions was that the main part of their documents contained the most critical information, while the supplemental items were included in the appendices. And then on the Part C side, we have Minnesota C and Michigan C, who submitted both well-formatted SSIPs that provided comprehensive information. I know we cannot limit page numbers. However, just as it was done last year by several states, your SSIP report can be presented successfully in less than 50 pages. Thank you, Michigan C, for showing us that it can be done. Minnesota C was slightly longer, but the organization of the report was clear, with headings and graphics to refer the reader to key points. Also, the table of contents used and the use of headings was efficient in guiding the reader to the appropriate section of the document. Overall, these efforts efficiently followed the guidance outline suggested by OSEP, for the most part with some customization to reduce redundancies. So in summary, when OSEP reviews the SSIP submission, we are looking for key pieces of information that should include changes in provider practices, changes in system infrastructure that are resulting in improvements and providing support to LEAs and EI programs. We look to see if scale-up and sustainability activities are being planned and implemented. We expect to see annual progress as expressed in data and qualitative performance measures. And we also look to see if reported activities and data are related to the state's theory of action. Including all of these components will ensure your state delivers a strong SSIP submission for Phase 3, Year 3. And now I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Fox.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, I have been monitoring the chat box, and we have not had a single question come in yet. So either everybody is so comfortable and well prepared to organize their SSIP submission, and this was just a safety check to make sure they're on the right ball, on the right road, or we're going to get a lot of questions come February and March. But hopefully this is not sounding like new information, and certainly hopefully this is not sounding like unreasonable expectations, because I think it's pretty consistent with what we've wanted for the last 2 years. And the nice thing about being in Phase 3, Year 3, is that many of us are quite practiced in knowing what's important to communicate, how to communicate it, and then leading into what we're going to talk about, some of the resources that are available to help you communicate and to do this work throughout the year. But before we get into that, there are a few reminders. These are your take-home messages. If you pay attention to nothing else, please pay attention to this slide. Your SSIP is due April 1st, 2019, and submitted into Grad 360, either directly into the indicator field or as an attachment. If you have any questions or concerns about how to do that, please contact your OSEP state lead. The report, the narrative, the indicator language you're reporting on, whatever language you're using to describe the actual submission, really does need to include progress updates for the activities that occurred since the last SSIP submission. We know that always gets a little tricky because the FFY data there's a slight overlap in some of the federal fiscal years for the activities, but we really want the most up-to-date information on the work that's taken place. For some states, they're finalizing their SSIP submission around December and early January to get it through an approval process for their internal stakeholders. So their activities may take place up through, say, November or December of 2018. For other states, they're including updates up until March 30th of 2019 for the report they turn in on April 1st. There is a lot of flexibility in that because we really do want to understand the work you're doing and how we can help support it in the upcoming year. So the more recent information we have, the better we understand what your needs are going to be and how we can mobilize and be strategic with our technical assistance resources. Reach out to your OSEP state lead for any questions you have about the SSIP content or the recent resources that are available throughout the year from our OSEP-funded technical assistance centers. This does not have to be a conversation you have twice a year, right before you submit the document and right after we've reviewed it and we're giving you feedback. These can be conversations that take place throughout the year about the progress of your work, about the new and available TA resources that may be available. The more this is embedded in your dialogue with your OSEP state lead, the better prepared we are to give you helpful feedback and to use the information in your SSIP to guide our TA endeavors. But the bottom line is, do not forget to submit your reports, and please, please, please include your SIMR data. It is an indicator in the APR. Failure to include the FFY data does mean that you have an incomplete APR. That is something that we take very seriously, and it has to be addressed no later than clarification if there's some confusion about what you are including as your FFY data, which is why Janine and Kathy so eloquently emphasized the importance of you being clear in the report as to what your data is for the SIMR, that you're being very clear if there are changes to your baseline and targets or your SIMR data is different in some way in terms of calculation and procedures from previous years, that the information in GRADS 360 match what you're reporting in your SS report. So if you've changed your baseline and targets and you're reporting them in your SS report, you need to change them in GRADS 360 if you have ever reported them there. That's really, really important to be consistent in that. So we have some resources, and I am perpetually humbled by the amazing work that is done through our OSEP-funded technical assistance centers to support states on really all of their work that they do, but my focus is mostly the SSIP. I tend to pay more attention to those resources, but we do have some information that was shared from IDC, ECTA, DAISY, MTAC, and NCSI to be shared as more recent resources or things that you might find helpful and available as you are developing your SSIP report and preparing to the submission or preparing to submit. And some of these are around issues that states have identified as needing additional information and support around, typically around data presentation and using data graphics, how to report on the evaluation of their work, identifying the key activities they want to collect evaluation data on, and then communicating that progress, implementing and evaluating their evidence-based practices and understanding fidelity tools and resources that are going to be helpful and beneficial to their work. And then, of course, for Part C, some of the child outcome data. There's a key feature of many of the SSIPs for Part C that go around improving the child outcome summary process and improving data quality around that child outcomes data. And so we have a lot of amazing resources that are available to help states around that specific activity or component of their theory of action. But there are some amazing resources out there. And this is just a small sample of those. So that leads into my next point of when you're talking with your OSEP state lead, if you are utilizing one or a few of these resources or other resources, it's really helpful to let us know what you're referencing or what you're finding helpful. We certainly can't stay on top of every possible document and toolkit and resource that's developed by all these amazing centers. But if there's something you're finding that you use very frequently or that you use throughout the SS work, if you let us know what it is, then we can do some homework in preparation of these conversations. And that way I know if you're using, for example, one of the great resources developed by DAISY, I'm not going to spend all my time understanding that same resource or a comparable resource that was developed by another center. But anyway, it's just helpful, and I think it helps to build that kind of bridge between collaboration between the state OSEP directly and our technical assistance providers that are there to assist you throughout the year. So we have one last polling question. And this is really just more of something we're a little curious about because we want to improve our process and we want to better support states around the SS work. But we have a polling question from our state, for our state, about what type of technical assistance do you find the most useful in the implementing and reporting of your SS work? Are you utilizing online toolkits or resources that you download from our TA Center website? Option B is some of the direct communication you may have with our technical assistance centers or our TA providers. Option C is support you get from OSEP staff, which could be range from your monthly conversations with your OSEP state lead to something that's more like draft reviews of SS submissions prior to April, or some of the webinars that are held like this throughout the year that talk very specifically about SF reports and content and have examples from other states. So if you will take a moment, we have a number of people who are responding. And the popular one, Janine, can you tell me what percentages right now?
Sure. 15% say that online toolkits are most useful. 65% say that direct communication with TA centers are most useful. 14% is the support from OSEP staff, and 5% webinars.
Okay, so it's not a surprise that our state really likes and appreciates the work that is done by our amazing technical assistance providers. So kudos to you, TA centers and TA providers. We know you're great. It's nice to know that the states value that as well. So I think we are now at the end of the formal presentation. I think as Greg and Janine and Kathy indicated, this was hopefully nothing particularly new. It's amazing how quickly time flies. But I don't think we've gotten any real questions in the chat box. So now would be a great time for you to submit a question via the chat box if there's something you want addressed during this call. Otherwise, I think that's with happy holidays and best wishes for a safe new year.
Just make sure that when you're going to look for the questions that have been entered, that you're in the questions drop down, because there are a couple things that have come in.
Janine, for those of you on the call, is monitoring the chat box right now because I stepped away. And honestly, this is the most difficult technical assistance, technical glitch we have throughout the day. We're all appreciate that. We'll call it an OSEP win.
And if you need help with the questions, I'd be happy to let you know what's in there.
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead, Jennifer?
Sure. Some of them I think I know the answers to, but I'll let you do that. The first question that came in is if they can get copies of the examples that were just discussed, and if so, where?
Indeed, they can. They can go to the public landing page that's located on Grad 360. So Grad 360 homepage. Scroll down to the middle of the screen. I can see it in red because I click it quite often, but it'll say SPP APR landing page and public landing page. These are public documents. They're posted along with all the other APR indicators, and you'll be taken to a site map where you select the year. So you'll want to select FFY 2016 if you want the examples that we shared this year. And it'll give you the option to select the state, and then you'll go D17 or C11 depending on which SF you're wanting to review. But you can also email leslie.cont@td.gov, and I will walk you through this process with screenshots if that's helpful.
Excellent. So the next question that came in, can the SSIP be submitted with our APR submission on February 1st?
Absolutely. The SSIP may be submitted anytime between February 1st and April 1st, but no later than April 1st. A caveat to that will be, once it is submitted, we do ask that you notify your OSEP. They may not know submitted because it won't have the same complete date or submit date. There's a chart in there for all the other APRs that say submitted versus completed, and it won't have completed. It'll only say submitted. And your OSEP state lead, if they don't know in advance that you submitted it, won't know that it's already available. We also ask that if you're going to submit it, make sure that's your final submission, because it's not helpful to have states go in and submit one document and then add something later on and change it. Make sure it's the final version that you want considered for this particular SPP APR.
Okay, the next question was, will OSEP provide states with an organizational outline to write the SSIP?
We have already provided an organizational outline to write the SSIP. It is the same one that was released in November 2016. So it's been available for about 2 years. The content, as Janine and Kathy indicated, has not changed significantly. The measurement language changed a little last year, but the expectations have not changed. The organizational outline is available on Grad 360, but once again, if you email leslie.fox@ed.gov for your OSEP state lead, we can make sure you know where to find that outline. It's a suggested format. I think a lot of states, even when they use the organizational outline, have started to customize it in certain ways, delete sections or headers that they feel like they've already covered that information someplace else. But it is available in Grad 360. If you go to the indicator page itself for B17 or C11, and you click on Phase 3 as if you want to enter the information directly into Grad 360, there are also headings in the indicator page that communicate what key pieces of information you need to report each year.
Okay, the next one says, it sounds like OSEP may have concerns if the report is too similar to last year's, even if the activities span multiple years, because this submission should focus on changes from the prior year. Is that correct?
I may not be understanding that question. We want to understand what has happened in the time since your last SSIP submission. So it's not necessary to repeat, for example, information that was in last year's SSIP report. You can provide an update. So I'll give one of my really poor analogies. If, for example, I were running a marathon and I'm checking in at mile 5, I don't need to go back when I hit mile 10 and say, oh, by the way, I also ran 5 miles. It's a given. I'm at mile 10 at this point. We want to know the work that you have done since the last SSIP submission, and you don't need to reiterate a lot of the information that took place in the previous submission report. So an update could be, in last year's report, we had selected and were implementing our evidence-based practices for literacy in 10 pilot schools. Since that time, in the past 12 months, we have begun to collect fidelity data, and we are using that data to understand whether or not these evidence-based practices are being implemented as intended and whether we're seeing expected changes in literacy practices by teachers.
Leslie, would it be okay if a state referenced a previous submission rather than reiterate it, but if they felt like they had a really detailed description and say last year's, can they just kind of reference that in their discussion?
Absolutely, but I think it's important to note, as a reader, if I move to your state, could I pick up this most recent document and have a general sense of what has taken place in the last year? Because if it's obscure, if I'm not sure about what you're talking about, did this happen in April of 2012? Did this happen in April of 2017? You're talking about, in the past year. Well, I think you need to be clear about when the activities that took place occurred and how that information is important for achieving your SIMR. And so it just shouldn't be obscure. And so a lot of times states feel the need to give a lot of the background information that hopefully as a reader I already have because I've read your previous submission. So it's helpful if you have a, as indicated in the year 3 report, phase 3, year 2 report, we have selected evidence-based practice, and since that time we have accomplished these specific activities now. So.
Okay, some of them are just comments, so I'm leaving those. One question that came in was, when should we expect to see the federal application?
That's not a Leslie Fox question. That's a Greg Moore question.
Yeah, we're close. There was one item that we needed for our counsel's office to resolve, and I understand they're very close to doing that. I want to thank all the Part D directors in their age of base information to indicate whether it was the same as what was submitted last year or if there were changes, what those changes were. That information is important to us because the budget service folks need that information to run the calculations they get to. You know, the overall 611, 619, and Part C allocation from Congress, but then they have formulas that they have to run to figure out how to allocate those monies to each state. So I appreciate you sending that in. So I'm expecting probably somewhere about mid-January, which I understand is later than we typically do. We're doing our best to try to get all that information together, though. We will be sending an email out to everybody once the applications become available and be posting those on Grads.
Excellent. And the last couple questions are all the same. Will you post this presentation in Grads 360?
Well, and Jennifer, I bet you can answer this question better than I can. Yes, the intention is Jennifer with AIR, our terrific moderator today, is recording the PowerPoint and the audio, and we'll be pulling that information together into a lovely file that we intend to post to Grads 360. But I suspect it will take us a couple of days to do that on our end, given our clear challenges sometimes with the internet and technology. But yes, it is being recorded. We do intend to post it, and we can certainly go ahead and post the PowerPoint slides for the just without the audio, and have those posted first thing tomorrow.
And that really is the end of the questions that have come in.
Okay, well, thank you, Jennifer, first of all. It made a world of difference to have you setting up and moderating this call for us. We could kind of relax and pay attention to the content. I also want to thank Leslie and the Performance Accountability team and Judy for the presentation today. It was very informative, very nicely put together. And I want to thank all of you for your continued interest in this topic. I know improvement of your systems and impacting those SIMMers are vitally interest to states. We're excited about continuing with this SSIP process into year 3 of phase 3 and look forward to your submissions. I just want to echo Leslie's wishes that she gave you for a wonderful, safe holiday and a happy new year. And our next call will be scheduled for the second Thursday of January, which I believe is Thursday of this month. TBD. We'll be sending out more information about that. So thank you, everyone. And this will conclude our call.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.